Kathleen, Jeff,
Here.
Jonathan,
Here.
Lori,
Here.
and Cindy.
Here.
Great. Okay. 7 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. Before we get started, I'd like to express my appreciation to Fran Adicott for her past support. A recent town staff reorganization has moved Fran to other duties. The commission has enjoyed Fran's support these past few years, and we wish her well with her new assignments. We also want to welcome Sharon Hum to her new duties as zoning clerk supporting this commission, and we look forward to working with you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody that's tuned in this evening, either by internet or by phone. It's my intention that everyone that wants to will have an opportunity to speak. If you've joined by internet, would you take a moment and go to the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen? And I ask you to sign up, put your name, address, and whether you support or oppose short-term rentals. And when we get to the public comment section later in this meeting, we'll be calling on individuals in the order that they've signed up in the chat box. For persons that have joined by phone and would like to have the opportunity to speak, we'll call on you after we work through the ones that have signed up on the chat box. So at this point, I'd like to call the meeting to order and approve or ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
We have a second.
I'll second.
And is anyone opposed to the agenda? Hearing no opposition, the agenda is approved for this evening. The third thing on the agenda this evening is to approve the December 15th Planning and Zoning meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll give a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
And do all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, the minutes for December 15th are approved. So moving on to the meat of this meeting. The short-term rental discussion this evening is intended to provide, first of all, commissioners an opportunity to ask about the current policy and related issues. It's my intention that this discussion will inform participating citizens of the current policy, and that the discussion will be as brief as possible so that adequate time will remain for public comment. And in this initial round, I'd ask that commissioners address your questions to the zoning administrator, and I'll begin. The term short-term rentals is not mentioned in the town code. Can you, Chris, Mr. Jakubiak, could you introduce the subject on short-term rentals? Tell us what they are and what is prohibited or what is allowed. And if you could identify the related ordinance to the issues being discussed. Mr. Jakubiak.
Sure, thanks. For those who don't know, I'm Chris Jakubiak and I administer the town's zoning ordinance. So I've encountered this issue from time to time over the past 8 years or so. So it's not necessarily a new issue. It's certainly an issue that has more prominence now than it has in the past.
Why is that?
You know, it might have something to do with COVID. More people staying local, being able to stay local and enjoy local amenities rather than traveling longer distances because of the restrictions on travel. Maybe it's just the popularity of the various internet platforms. I don't know, quite frankly, what all the reasons are.
My opinion is that with the internet availability of things like what's called Airbnb, it's more accessible, it's easier to find rentals, and this Airbnb organization makes it simpler to rent and to find renters, and also to vet them to make sure your place isn't getting trashed. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, so back to the zoning aspects of this, and this really is mostly a zoning issue. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but if the questions or the topic veer into code enforcement, we have Connie Odell here tonight, and Connie's the code enforcement officer. And to the extent that it veers into any town management or administrative functions, and there's overlap with administration, Holly Wall, the town manager, town administrator, is here tonight too. So some of those questions that I might get, I might refer them to those people. So the question is really a zoning question. And for folks who are here, you probably know the town has a zoning map and a zoning ordinance. It divides the town into zones. There are a variety of residential zones. There are commercial zones. There's a couple mixed use zones. There's a zone that protects the environment. And there are certain uses of land that are allowed in each zone. And there are certain uses that are not allowed, that are not permitted. And that's what this really comes down to. Naturally, an Airbnb situation would occur in a residential structure, and they are found in the residential zones. So we have to look to the zoning ordinance to see what uses are permitted. And the use of a home for short-term rentals for tourists is not a permitted use in the town zoning ordinance. It's a tourist home. You know, it's effectively a tourist home. It's a commercial type of use. And that is allowed in town, but not in the residential zones. It's allowed in the maritime zone, which is, you know, in the center of town where the town hall is now, and the resort hotel. And it's allowed in the commercial districts. And there are a number of commercial districts distributed throughout the community.
So
Outside of those areas, it's not permitted.
So if I could interrupt a second. So if there are homes, residences in either the commercial district or the maritime district, those are eligible for this tourist home designation.
Yes, correct. And yet we don't have any. No one's, to the best of my knowledge, ever petitioned for use and occupancy permit to use a house within those zones for an Airbnb
Okay.
or other use. So they
Actually,
could.
or that is open to, it's not clear if that's commercial or residential, because it's quiet enjoyment of other people enjoying a home, which is still considered residential. It's not considered commercial, or at least it's in a gray area, open to interpretation. So to say that, you know, residential zoning does not allow for Airbnb is just a matter of interpretation, because Annapolis has not come to that conclusion. Because I also have an Airbnb in Annapolis, and I actually personally have talked to the mayor in Annapolis, Mayor Gavin Buckley, and he actually reached out to me because we went all year. We went through all these meetings at City Hall, went back and forth, and Annapolis.
If I could interrupt for a second, this is.
Well, let me
section,
finish 1 minute.
I'm sorry, this section is for the commissioners to ask and try and clarify the situation. We will open it up to the public later on.
Okay, but
And I'd be happy to answer your question later on about interpretation, because that's ultimately the job of the zoning administrator to interpret the code. And the relief valve for that is that anyone who feels aggrieved by an interpretation can go to the Board of Appeals. It's a set of citizens who are set up to evaluate the zoning administrator and see if he made an error in his judgments. And to date, no one's ever petitioned any refusal to grant a bed and breakfast to the Board of Appeals. And this is not a new matter. In fact, in 2014 was the first time I formally had to address this issue, and I drafted a letter to the owner of the property advising him of the zoning violation, namely that he was using his property as a tourist home. And he complied, and we didn't have to go through any complicated enforcement procedures. And over
Well,
the
that's-
years, even before that and after that, from time to time, I've had conversations with people who took the time to inquire about what the town required and or would have approved, and we discussed it over the phone.
So, Mr. Jakubiec, are you saying that if your house is in a residential area, and if you could tell our listeners how they can determine whether they're in a residential, commercial, maritime, et cetera area, that would help them, I think. But also, if they are in a residential area, they can go to the Board of Appeals and get their house designated a tourist home?
No. So the zoning map is on the town's website. And I can't remember the exact pathway to get there, but it's on the town's website. It's also in the town hall. So when the town hall was open for business, people could come in and see it. It's a very large map on the wall. And that is the official zoning map for the town. If anybody wants a smaller copy to have on their computer, I can email copies, or anybody can. The planning commission clerk can send copies out too. So no,
I would say if anyone has a specific question about that, my email is on the planning and zoning page of the town's website. Send me your address and we can answer your question about what zone you're in.
So the reference to the Board of Appeals was meant to say that the town has an appeal procedure. So if a zoning administrator makes a decision and anyone, either a neighbor or the property owner, feels like a mistake was made or they feel aggrieved by the decision, they have an outlet. They could appeal to the Board of Appeals and make their case at a public hearing, and the Board of Appeals will make a determination about the matter. In fact, they'll simply say, did Chris review the code properly and apply the standards correctly in this situation? So that's always the outlet that the zoning code provides. So I guess that's the bigger issue is it's a use that is not allowed in residential zones, except when the use is clearly a bed and breakfast. And a bed and breakfast is a legal use. And for many intents and purposes, it's like a Airbnb situation. It's the old-fashioned bed and breakfast. It's where someone lives in the house, takes care of the house, has people come to the house to spend the night, have breakfast or a meal, and leave. So it accommodates transients. In that way, it's essentially a tourist home, which is the old-fashioned word for it, and it's a permitted use. So it's a permitted blend of commercial and residential that is allowed in the residential zones. And in fact, there are two properties in town that once they were notified about the short-term rental use of the property, said, oh, by the way, we're a bed and breakfast. We fully intend to be a bed and breakfast. So we helped them get into compliance with the ordinance and got them the permits they needed. One applicant went to the board of, to the county and got life safety inspections of the house and the rooms to certify their safety. And she's well on her way operating her bed and breakfast legally. The other, I'm not quite sure where that applicant is, but he has been approved by the town to operate. I don't know if he's obtained his approvals from the county yet. His
So
inspection.
what are the differences between a tourist home in the code and a bed and breakfast in the code?
Yeah, there's actually very little difference. The bed and breakfast is much more of a residential type of use. A tourist home is the same, but the tourist home is not limited to the number of transients or customers or folks. But the bed and
Doesn't-
breakfast is limited to 5 guest rooms.
Okay, a bed and breakfast has to be licensed. Is that not correct?
It does, yes.
A tourist home does not have to be licensed.
Correct, under our current code, that's right.
And a bed and breakfast, to get a license, has to go through inspections, safety inspections, etc. A tourist home does not have to do the inspection since it doesn't have to have a license.
Well, regarding the license, that's a term that we don't necessarily use. It requires a permit, a zoning permit. And it needs to be.
A license is the term that's used in the zoning code.
It needs to be on a registry, a state-approved registry.
No, it says a license. It's section 162.15C, exemptions from the license, rental license. So anyway, I just point that out. There are significant differences between a bed and breakfast and the tourist home, which seems to fall into the closest category to what people are calling short-term rentals.
And it's grouped under hotel, motel, tourist home. So it's really
Right.
connected to the more intensive use of that,
Right.
that operation. Let me pick up my staff report here. Certainly the planning commissioners have had this, and so the last aspect of the report to the planning commission touched on the town's housing code, which it adopted in 2019. And the housing code didn't address short-term rentals. In fact, as part of the discussion, it was decided that short-term rentals were not going to be legalized through the process of dealing with the housing code. In fact, the planning commission weighed in on that issue several years before the housing code was adopted. So there's a consistency over the course of many years in both of the decision-making bodies that these short-term rentals would not be allowed under current laws. Not to suggest that the future change would be made, but the current process of adopting the housing code did not include expanding it to include short-term rentals.
Okay, well, I have one last question before I turn it over, ask other commissioners if they have questions. Most of the residences in Chesapeake Beach are under homeowners associations. Is that correct?
Yes, it certainly appears so.
And I understand that most, if not all, the homeowners associations have a restriction that a rental property within that association can be no shorter than 6 months. Is that your understanding?
I haven't read them, but I'm familiar with those covenants in other communities, and that is a typical standard. So it likely applies here too.
What if a homeowners association said that they would allow short-term rentals? That would not override the town's code, correct?
Correct. That's right. The zoning ordinance would still be the deciding code.
Okay. If you don't mind, Chris, I'll ask, let's start with Miss Baralt, if you want to ask any questions of the town staff.
Sure. I just have 2 questions. I had read that an Airbnb from their, I guess, certifying body, they say they put a cap on occupancy for the B&B at 16. Do we follow that here in Chesapeake Beach? I know you just mentioned that the difference between a tourist home is and the B&B was the B&B was limited to 5 rooms, but that doesn't talk about occupancy of people.
Yeah. So the B&B, traditional bed and breakfast, like the town permits, limits occupancy to 5 rooms. But the short-term rentals that we're familiar with don't limit occupancy to rooms because it's a house, right? The entire house is rentable. So that's part of the distinction. And since we don't allow them, we don't have a standard for the number of people. Now, if the county inspector does his inspection and determines that occupancy has to be limited within the rooms in a bed and breakfast, then he's entitled to put those occupancy limits on it, because he's going to be looking at the width of the hallways, the access to the outdoors, exit, egress, life safety issues. So he's entitled to place conditions on occupancy. So maybe while a bed and breakfast could have up to 5 rooms occupied, the county building inspectors may say, no, the house is too small for that, only 1 or only 2. So there's a practical aspect of this that is determined when the inspector enters the premises.
Okay. And my other question is, typically when the short-term rental obviously is less than 30 days, whereas the B&B, people typically don't people stay at the B&B just like overnight or 1 or 2 nights?
Yes, sure, maybe longer.
Okay.
But they're not renting out a dwelling unit. They're not renting out housing unit. They're renting out rooms in a commercial establishment, essentially.
So the challenge is the short-term rentals, if they were actually in the commercial area of the town, it would seem to be, but there aren't, I know there currently aren't any, but that would be permitted by the housing code. Is that correct?
Yeah, the existing zoning ordinance would allow them. There's certain conditions placed on motels, hotels, and tourist homes, but they're not onerous. And so generally they would be permitted within the commercial zones.
Okay. Is there any reason why would it just be they're not favorable areas to have a short-term rental in the commercial area and that's why there isn't any? Or can you speak to why there aren't any in the commercial area at all?
I don't know the full answer, but I know there are actually quite few residences within commercial zones. There might be 12, 15, maybe slightly more, but not much more than that. And of course, they're occupied. Most of the commercial zones have businesses on them, and they're, they're not mixed in any way. It's either business or residential. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Let's see. How about Mr. Larson? Do you have any questions you'd like to ask the town staff?
A permitted B&B, does that have to be owner occupied?
It either has to be owner occupied or manager occupied. So the owner technically doesn't have to live there, but the person that manages the property has to live there.
Okay, so that there's a person there, relatively constantly monitoring what's going on.
Correct.
Okay. And obviously an Airbnb doesn't have that requirement. I don't know, I've never,
Yeah.
no, okay,
I'm not aware that has any requirement like that.
okay.
Based on past experience, we know that's not happened generally, so.
Yeah, generally
I'm good.
speaking, the Airbnbs, they don't require any owner or any representative to be there while the person is staying in the home.
Correct.
So an Airbnb is just relying on good faith that everything's going to be run appropriately.
Yes, and they, I know that they maintain lists. They get feedback from the building owner, the homeowner, on how the property was treated while they were absent by the renter, the tenant, and the Airbnb will knock people off their list and not allow them to rent again if they've mistreated the property.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Ms. Blackwelder, you have questions?
Yeah, so my first question is, which areas are we talking about? So there are some HOAs, but just defining for everybody, where are we talking about that have no HOAs, but would potentially have these B&Bs that we are talking about?
So we're referring to mostly to the traditional parts of Chesapeake Beach, the ones closest to the water. What we know as the middle subdivision, which is the neighborhood north of Maryland 260 up to North Beach. And then the neighborhood south of the town center along the bay side of Maryland 261. That's referred historically to as the campgrounds subdivision. And then there are several other small enclaves of neighborhoods and pockets of housing that are similarly treated. I think almost everything else is within an HOA. And of course, in the traditional parts of town, there are some new modern townhouse developments and condominium projects, but I think mostly they're controlled by covenants and deed restrictions as well. Seagate, for example. Yeah.
Okay. And then what is the standard that we're applying to owner occupied?
The owner has to live there and occupy the residence.
Right. So for mortgage loans and different things, to qualify for a primary residence, it's a certain percentage of time that you have to live there. And then if you're buying an investment home, it's a different percentage. So there is some ambiguity there, and a need to correct our code as desired so that that ambiguity isn't misinterpreted. I think that's very clear that our code is very confusing to a lot of people, and we need to address the code in some way. So I'm glad we're having this listening session to see how we might address that. Those are my main two questions.
So when an applicant applies for something like a bed and breakfast, the list of conditions is provided, and they certify that they're going to comply with the conditions. And one of them is that they live there at the residence.
Right. The question would be what percentage of time, because I don't see anything that says on the premises while it's a B&B. And there's a lot of holes in this code. I think everybody agrees. And so that's what we're here to do. We're here to address gaps in the code and things that can be misinterpreted.
Okay, Chris, so are you saying that the Airbnb is essentially a loophole that people can use to operate short-term rentals?
No, no, not at all.
Okay, I just want to make that clear.
No.
That as you understand it, and I think I've heard, a bed and breakfast requires either the owner or the owner's representative to be there when tenants are in the house.
Yes, and there are a number of other conditions that are placed on that use as well that protect neighborhood quality and public safety. Like there's got to be parking on the property. So there's a whole list of kind of conditions that speak to that, but just one of them is the owner occupancy.
Okay, Jonathan Evans, do you have any questions for Mr. Jakubiak?
Okay, I wanted to thank everyone that was joining us tonight. I look forward to hearing both sides and reasons for support and reasons for concern. I think it's very beneficial to us. And also I wanted to just clarify the survey results. I think I counted around 200 yeses and 140 noes. Is that correct?
I've not seen the survey results. I've just seen some of the responses, the written responses that people have included.
I think I can speak to that. Jonathan, actually, you received just the written comment, not necessarily yes or no's, so that wouldn't be entirely correct to count the comments.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Jonathan, if you don't have any more questions,
No, I think I'm good.
all right, let me move on to Commissioner Greengold. You have questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Am I, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm on.
Yes.
Chris, what kind of taxes or money does the town receive from a bed and breakfast? Is it the same as the Rod and Reel would pay, or how does that work?
Yeah, I don't know. I was suppose it's just a property tax. I don't know that there's I could be wrong. I actually don't know. I should pause and maybe Holly can offer some perspective on that. I just don't know if there's a hotel tax that is assigned to bed and breakfast owners. Holly, do you know?
Yeah, there's not an additional tax that's assigned to bed and breakfast owners.
Okay, so basically they're in competition with the Rod and Reel, but they're not paying the Rod and Reel taxes or liabilities. So, okay, that's an interesting point. So, so then on the bed and breakfast, I assume they have to have one parking space per room on site, or how does the parking work on the bed and breakfast?
For each guest room that's provided, one off-street parking space is required.
One off-street for each room. Okay, okay.
So the person who provides the service, the accommodations, has to provide the parking on their own property.
On the property, okay, okay. And
Who provides the off-street parking? I mean, isn't that city that owns those properties, off-street parking? Well, how can it be off-street parking? Shouldn't it be on-site parking, the requirement, if you're gonna have?
Mr. Chairman, you want to stay focused on answering questions from the Planning Commission members?
Yes, please. We will get to.
Okay.
okay, Chris, the other question I have is, would you consider, now I'm calling the areas that you're referring to that are non-HOA, I refer to them as vintage homes. It's a term that I picked up when I was doing some research, and it seems to apply because it's the older neighborhoods really that are the non-HOAs. Wouldn't you agree that that's generally the case of the older homes?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt.
Now, would you also say that they are probably the less expensive home? Like if you were going to have seniors move into the town, let's say, would they probably be moving more into the vintage homes than into the HOA homes? Or do we have any idea about how much it would cost to move into the vintage homes as opposed to the HOA homes? Is there any idea about that?
Gosh, I would only be expressing an opinion. It's really not formed by any real experience on this. I don't have a feel for that. For instance, where seniors might locate. In my kind of just experience in knowing people in the communities, seniors seem to gravitate to some of the projects that require less maintenance and have a sort of a really nice standard of living and security, like some of the really nice condominium projects along the waterfront.
I guess the
That's
other,
just because I've met with a lot of community members there.
right, and they're senior, and they're more senior. I guess my other question is, when you were talking last month about making sure that in our town, and this is correct, you're correct about this, that we have to make sure in our planning and looking at the entire town, we have to be cognizant of where we have lower income people living, as opposed to, you've got higher income people living here. You've got to have housing for lower income people. And I guess my question is, do you have any idea, would you know if the vintage homes would be more applicable to a lower income group of people? Could they rent out more rooms in that area? Do they rent out basements in that area more? Or do you have any idea about that?
Yeah, so there are, in my experience, more rental properties within the older homes. And many of them are non-conforming. They harken back to the days before zoning, when these houses were beach houses and cottages that ran through families, and they were always rented out. So a lot of the apartments that are not part of a complex or part of a townhouse group do fall within the older homes that you're referring to.
So I noticed that even on my street and around, because I'm in the vintage area, you might call it. So I noticed that even in my own street, I've got a lot of rental houses. I've got one behind me, one, two on the side of me, a couple in the front, on the other side. So I do notice there were a lot of rentals in this area, which would possibly be the ones that might be more inclined to be used as a short-term rental if indeed the zoning changed, I guess, is probably what would happen. So I guess my question is going back to, if short-term rentals were allowed in this area, would you then be pushing out the ability to have more rental space for lower income people? I guess is my question.
You certainly create an additional economic use for an existing house. So it's quite possible that would happen. Remember, these rental units, though, are complete living units, and they're typically small. So, well, I guess someone who owned that house could rent out on a short-term basis, a weekend, a small apartment. But what we've seen typically, it's the entire house that gets rented. So I don't know if it displaces renters. It may. I mean, you may find it more economically advantageous to move the renters out and put this up for Airbnb. The town is a really great place to come and vacation to. So maybe that's where the market strength is. I just don't know.
So, so then if I had a house and I have a basement that's, rentable, could I live in this house and rent it out in the basement and still be within code if I was living here? That wouldn't be against the code, right? Or is it? I don't know.
Do you mean just have a rental property in your house?
Yeah, well, and I just rent out the basement.
Yeah, not as a short-term rental, just as a rental.
So I couldn't do it as a short term.
Right. No, you could.
Oh, I could.
If
Okay.
you met the various conditions of a bed and breakfast. I mean, you know, if you became a bed and breakfast. But remember, a bed and breakfast is not about renting a housing unit. It's about renting a guest room in a housing unit. So you see the distinction?
So it's a guest room, but you have to provide meals and change linens all the time. Is that part of the service?
Yeah.
But okay, so if I just rented out a room in my house or a basement or whatever, and I lived here, that is still okay on a short-term basis. Is that, I'm confused about that.
No, you could, if you were able to have an accessory apartment, which is a standard that has to be met, you have to confirm that you can have an accessory apartment. It's allowed in certain zoning ordinances or certain zoning districts.
Okay.
And you obtained a rental license. You met the code standards for having a livable quality unit. You could rent your apartment, your basement apartment, without issue. It would be an allowable use of your property.
And you
Okay,
could do
so
it, and it could be done on a short term or a long term.
No, it would have to be on at least 30-day period. You can only have a rental property you can only rent your house or units, these rental situations are confined to 30-day or more periods.
okay.
Okay, but she could apply for a bed and breakfast license and then rent it out one night at a time, right?
Well, conceivably,
Because
but
she's
she'd have to
living
provide
there.
the service of a bed and breakfast business. I mean, you can't just use that to maneuver around the code. It would have to operate like a bed and breakfast. It would have to be on a state registry. You'd have to have the parking. You'd have to provide meals.
Chris, if I might, one of the other stipulations of a bed and breakfast is no separate kitchens are provided. So
Yeah, if
if
I
you're
can
talking
interrupt,
about-
please, we're trying to follow the agenda, which has the commissioners first, and then we have two speakers that are on the agenda, and then we will open that up to public comment.
Sir,
Well,
I'm
Connie was clarifying. No, Connie was just
the code
clarifying.
enforcement officer.
Yeah, she's
I
clarifying.
am staff. It's Connie Odell speaking, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what I was saying, just to add something to what Chris was, Chris's point was, one of the stipulations of a bed and breakfast is that no separate kitchens be provided. So a regular rental unit would not be capable of being turned into a bed and breakfast because a regular rental unit would have a kitchen in it.
Thank you for clarifying. I see that. So if I was going to rent out a room in my house, that person could actually use my kitchen. Well, I guess I'm muddying the waters here. Maybe I shouldn't even do that. But I know that in other areas, they will rent out a room and call that a short-term rental. And I was just wondering if I could do something like that and would still be considered a short-term rental. But anyway, I guess that's just a whole nother level of confusion. But theoretically, I can't really do that, can I, Chris?
Not on a short-term basis.
Not on a short-term basis. Okay, all right. That's what I want to know. Have you had a lot of interest in these short-term rental groups, like, let's just say VRBO, Airbnb? There's a number of them. I know a lot of them out there. Have you had any, how many have come through and asked for permission to come in, or what is your, input about that?
Well, it's the individual homeowner that we would interface with, of course. And as a zoning administrator, I had some interactions with people years ago, but for a while we didn't hear anything about it. And then all of a sudden we got a kind of a flood of interest, but that was really handled as a code enforcement issue. No one actually called the zoning administrator and said, is this allowed, or what does your code say? Or Is there an appeal process, or what do I need to do to be a legal bed and breakfast? These things just happened.
So when people are buying homes, they're not first calling you and saying, hey, what's the code before I buy? I want to find out because this is my intention. It's a secondary home. You know, they're not doing any of that then. They're not calling and asking those kind of questions.
People do ask those questions, but they haven't on this particular issue. I mean, on bed and breakfast.
Okay, because it seems like we've got some some Airbnb or some short-term rentals. So I would thought maybe they would find out first before they purchase, but okay, so you haven't had that. Now, going back to Connie, now I know you've had some complaints about different short-term rentals that have come up. Have you had significant issues where we've had to call in policemen and that kind of thing, or what's gone on with complaints?
I know of 2 police calls that were made this summer. One stemming from neighbors of near a short-term rental, and one actually came from the short-term rental itself. And I don't know what actually happened, but that call was stopped before the unit ever arrived on scene. But the other one was having to do with late night parties and things going on outside, lots of noise, excessive parking.
And was the owner notified, or how did that end up?
The owner was notified immediately the very next day by
But
me.
But you didn't have the owners. Did you have the owner's information in order to call them, or no? Who?
I found it.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Chairman. I think I've had all my questions answered. Thank you.
Okay, we've had a question on the chat line here that I think needs to be answered now. What section of the code, he says, does not allow short-term rentals? As I pointed out earlier, short-term rentals, the term does not appear in the code anywhere. So how does one know when they look through the code that a short-term rental isn't allowed? And where in the code would they determine that?
Okay, so it's in the zoning ordinance, which is chapter 290 of the town's code. And what you want to do is go to the table of permitted uses by zoning district, which is 290-11. Let me just verify I got that right. Actually, it's 290-10. You can go to that table. It lists all the uses that are allowed within the entire town, and it lists all the zoning districts that exist in the town. And you just follow the matrix across and see if that uses corresponds with your zoning district. So again, you have to know your zoning district first. Then you have to know the use. So you go down and you see motel, hotel, and tourist home, and it's not permitted in the residential districts, but it is permitted as a conditional use in the commercial district and the maritime district.
As a tourist home.
And yes, as a tourist home.
I think what's confusing is it's such a common term, short-term rentals now, and it's not found in the code. So someone looking to see whether they would be allowed or not would have trouble. They'd have to read through the whole code and figure out and look for the right words, tourist home, which might not pop into their head. So it's something that we might want to consider clarifying.
Yeah, I agree. That's right. We would be.
Okay, so let's move on to the next section. By my count, we have 8 or 10 individuals that would like to present during the public comment period on the chat line. There may be more on the phone. So we have 2 speakers that asked prior to the meeting if they could make a presentation. One is on the agenda, Mr. Shad Montague. He'll go first. And then we have Mr. Josh Johnson from the Chesapeake Beach Tourism Coalition. And we'll ask him to make his statement for his coalition. And then we'll move on to those, starting with the people in the chat box, which begins with Mr. Brad Boyce, followed by Mr. Aaron Warren, and then Mr. Getman, and on. So if Mr. Montague, if you could go ahead, if there's anybody else listening that wants to get on the speakers list, would you add your name to the chat list, or be prepared when we get to the phones to make your comments? And if we could ask people to keep them concise so that everybody gets a chance to speak. So, Mr. Montague.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And my wife is on this as well. Can we share her screen? Because she has a PowerPoint presentation that we'd like to go through. Is that possible?
Yes, give me 1 second. I think I can make that happen.
Okay.
Would you just mind unblocking the chat section? I think it would be fair if I can chat. I'm not able to chat. Are you able to fix that?
There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to enter a chat. I don't have anything on my end.
And I cannot make any comments in the chat area, so.
Or why?
Okay, so we'll go and start. And Mr. Jakubiak brings up some interesting points. One of the things that we would like to say is we're here to work with the community. We're here to work with the town. We want to be a positive community partner with the vacation rentals. You know, just personally as a homeowner and as part of a lot of people that are in this business as well. You know, that's really what our goal is, and we found that there was we really had no way to bring this up, I guess, because we were being I want to say pushed off, but we were told to come here first because this was a planning and zoning issue, and we didn't really see that there was ever a vote on the rules and just what the standard was for renting a property. Because if you look at it, we have the only real difference between a short-term rental and a long-term rental is the amount of time. So with saying that, we're gonna talk about some of the things that we do and some of the things that we partner with. You know, really, what is a vacation rental? So, because one of the questions I had when I brought it up was what's a tourist house? We were having a hard time getting a definition of that, and I didn't really see where that was put into the code at all. So I did want to define what a vacation rental is, and it's the renting out of a furnished apartment house or a professionally managed resort condo as an alternative to a hotel. And it's mainly used in the United States, and it could be, you know, a vacation rental, a short-term rental. So a lot of people call them Airbnbs, but Airbnb is actually just a company, kind of falls into that term, like you would call a soda Coca-Cola in that sense. So, and then one of the things that we wanted to talk about was what are the main people renting vacation rentals, and with VRBO. The average renter is a 50-year-old woman traveling with a family of 4. They want quiet just as much as the neighbors do, and that's one of the things that we wanted to bring out. As an owner, I would want to rent to a responsible guest because I want them to take care of my property. It's the same as if I was renting a long-term rental. I would want to screen those applicants fairly and make sure that they were going to take care of the property as well. And that would be set up through a lease, whether it's a short-term rental or a long-term rental. And those terms would be dictated to make sure that whoever it was taking care of the property and fitting it into the community. What types of people would be renting in Chesapeake Beach? People are looking to get away from the city. People who are looking to attend a wedding at a local venue. We have several wedding venues in the area that a lot of times the limited space that is available to those people, they have to go outside of the town. Families that want to explore a quiet, quaint waterfront community, which totally explains what Chesapeake Beach is. Military parents visiting their families. We have a lot of military bases here. We have military that's looking to stay for a period of time as well, along with their families. Families that want to explore what Chesapeake Beach has to offer. Chesapeake Beach really I don't want to say sells itself, but really sells itself as a small town atmosphere. It has a great community, and people would like to come here, whether it's for a charter boat fishing, if they want to, attend any of the other events in the area. Again, right there, attending many of the events hosted by Chesapeake Beach. We personally love to watch the fireworks. I think that's one of our favorite things to do in Chesapeake Beach. People coming to gamble at the Rod and Reel who chose not to stay at the hotel. Families visiting. There are a lot of local areas. We're very close to Washington, D.C. We're close to Annapolis. We're close to Alexandria. There's places for them to go, as well as not just Chesapeake Beach. I think that one of the things we'll get into is what Chesapeake Beach wants to envision itself as. And I think that when we get to that point, you'll see that that's what we're talking about. The display of lights, I think that's amazing as well. People love to drive through the town and see that. I love taking my son through and checking everything out. Families need a place to stay when their homes are being sold or they're buying properties. There's not a lot of ability for people if they have a contract on their house that they can find a place to stay if the terms work well or don't work well for them in that situation. Family reunions, birthdays, wedding celebrations, all those types of things are things that really, I think, Chesapeake Beach lends itself to. Some of the myths, I think, that with vacation rental owners, and we've had, I think, a couple of people when we did have a vacation rental in Chesapeake Beach, we had neighbors that were online and they were talking with us and just really had never had an issue, never had problems, and we worked to make sure that those people were taken care of. Vacation rental owners are out-of-state investors or corporate enterprises who aren't residents of the community. One of the things just that Cindy said was, Airbnb and VRBO coming in and talking to the town, that wouldn't really happen because they're just services that the homeowners, many renters are just rental owners or mom and pop type of operations. It's a family, or it's somebody who's looking to help with paying their mortgages, especially in this time frame where we're having issues with a lot of unemployment and a lot of issues just with people paying their bills and not being able to pay their mortgages. Vacation rentals threaten the character of a community and decrease property values. Vacation rentals spread tourism dollars to communities and local businesses outside of the traditional hotel districts. Vacation rentals can actually raise property values, and they can also make sure that the improvements are done, the upgrades of the properties, and we'll show some of the houses that have been moved that had been a standard homeowner living there to becoming a rental property and how the houses are more attractive. Vacation rentals aren't as clean as hotels. The fact is VRBO and Airbnb have both issued enhanced cleaning and disinfection guidelines. Airbnb, you have to have a 24-hour wait between your bookings. VRBO follows rules by the Center of Disease Control, the WHO, and Crystal International standards, which are what are used by the top line hotels in the industry. Myth: vacation rentals create unaffordable housing problems. The fact is, vacation rentals typically make up less than 1% of a city's housing stock. Wages and real estate market conditions have a much bigger impact on housing affordability. Just right now, we're seeing a push in the pricing of houses, and it's not because of vacation rentals. It's not in one way or the other. It's being decided by the economics of the state and the country. Vacation rentals are party houses used only by frat groups and bachelorette parties. They create nuisance problems for neighbors due to noise, parking, and trash. Again, the fact is, VRBO travelers an average of a 50-year-old woman traveling with her family of 4. They want quiet and they want to relax. That's why they're coming here. Myth: vacation rentals do not pay taxes and unfair advantage over hotels. Vacation rentals are subject to lodging and occupancy taxes in most areas, and which provide millions in tax revenue to cities and states each year. So we'll get more into that in a little bit. How do vacation rentals benefit communities? They drive economic and tax benefits. They help homeowners earn extra income. They help by creating and supporting good jobs. A lot of the people that would operate vacation rentals would utilize staff and employ people that are in the community as well, whether it's cleaning services, landscaping companies, plumbers, electricians, people that are doing work on the house. Increasing foot traffic for small businesses. A lot of people go out to the restaurants. A lot of people like to frequent some of the antique shops and things like that are in the area, and they spread the benefit of tourism to the entire area. So we talked a little bit about this before. They're VRBO, Airbnb, and Evolve. They're multi-million-dollar companies who specialize in helping people rent vacations. They're just a platform. They don't rent the properties themselves. They don't own the properties themselves. And the platforms all require different items and controls, yet all of them are positioned around providing excellent properties for rent as they make money off of the rent. And their goal is to make sure that the owners are taking care of, number one, the properties, number two, the guests, and they have the same standards with the guests. If the guests create issues and problems, they'll ban them. They'll ban the owners from being on their platform as well if they don't do a good job with it. That all of them collect taxes for the rentals, and allow the consumers to post comments, and allow the homeowner or the owner to post comments as well. One of the things that VRBO goes over is committed to being a good neighbor and contributing positively to communities. We want to make sure that the unique character of the community in which we would work, whether it's Chesapeake Beach or North Beach or anywhere else like that, that's part of the awesomeness of Chesapeake Beach is people want to come there. VRBO believes that fair and effective vacation rental policies are achieved through, compromise. Bans and restrictions don't necessarily solve the issue of this situation. We want to work with the lawmakers. We want to work with the commission and everybody in the town to make sure that we're working in conjunction with everyone. Going into Chesapeake Beach Comprehensive Plan, the 2040 vision, some of the things that were said there, and anybody that knows this is, there were a couple of days where the community asked the town to give their vision of what they want from Chesapeake Beach in 2040. There were 3 questions that were asked, and they were, what would Chesapeake Beach look like if you had the power to make it any way you wanted?
Does understand. And he explained it to us today. We're not letting those soldiers go home, Tim Ryan said, until they do what our
what would you preserve about the town, and what would you change about it? And also imagine you're a future generation of town resident and tell us what would impress you most about the thoughtfulness and vision of today's citizen planners. And you can go right into it. It said develop the vibrancy of the community, enhance the cohesiveness of the town, preserve the small town charm, live in balance with the environment, you know, promote the small businesses, keep that feel. The public facilities and services and utilities are great. And the shopping, having water taxis, town center with activities and shopping and restaurants. I think those are exactly what I would want in the town. So some of the demographics of the town are, coming from Wikipedia, the town of Chesapeake Beach is a total area of 2.79 square miles. And the population in 2019 was 5,960 people. Median age is 36. Average income is $101,500. And the average house price is $328,600. So with that, one of the things I want to point out is with Chesapeake Beach being that size, part of what the vision says, and part of what we need in the town is, if we want these restaurants and we want these, I guess, town center feel of having the small shops and having these antique shops and places like that around, then we do need to have some flow of business coming through, not just from the rod and reel. So we looked up a couple of things, and the history of Chesapeake Beach. Chesapeake Beach was established as a resort community at the end of the Chesapeake Beach Railway. A lot of people know this, a short line railroad from Washington, D.C. It was a site of slot machines. It was considered the part of Little Nevada area of Southern Maryland. And we had steamer ships, all kinds of people. The weekend population of Chesapeake Beach reached into the 10,000s during the 1920s, until economic depression and a hotel fire brought it to an end. And then the Bay Bridge changed that as well. So the town itself has a history of tourism, and one of the things I would say is we do have some things in the code that are very confusing. And the point I would make is the town has really had a history of tourism. One of the things, we were on the planning and zoning meeting last month. Some of the revisions to the rod and reel that we would point out is they increased the square footage by 20,000 square feet. They increased the gaming area, increased the number of hotels. Their goal is to have 150 weddings a year. They do have a 5% occupancy tax per stay, which is something that I think could be a possibility with the right situation to help the town in all areas to do something like that, with whether it's bed and breakfast or with short-term rentals. Increasing the banquet room sizes and meeting rooms, all these things, really what we want to do is we want to keep a small town feel, but if we have a ton of people in one specific area, it would spread this out, and it would make the town much more viable. It would be more vibrant, and it would be a great place to stay. Mr. Jakubiak brought this up, the town code on short-term rentals, which again, it is very confusing and hard. I didn't, thank you, Mr. Brown, because I was confused about where to find this information. Really what it says is the code that's being referred is a person occupying a room or group of rooms forming a single habitable unit, which is a house, but not for cooking or eating purposes, and paying compensation to an owner or operator for lodging or board. Any person occupying such rooms and paying such compensation without prearrangement for less than a week at a time shall be classed for purposes of this chapter not as a room or boarder or lodger, but as a guest of a commercial establishment. And one of the things I really couldn't find is the definition of what a tourist home was in anywhere in the code. So there's not really good clarity with that. But I would say because the houses do have, I guess, kitchens in them, that they're not paying compensation for board. This doesn't necessarily apply in the same sense as what Mr. Jakubiak is saying. Room and board refers to lodging, utilities, and food provided for a fee or in exchange for specific duties or service. Room and board is provided by various entities such as colleges and private residences. Policies such as fee, services, amenities provided, and expected conduct of occupants vary by entity. But we don't see in a vacation rental, you don't see the board portion of this happening. So I can tell you that there are many towns and cities around the country that have embraced the idea of vacation rentals, and it's worked well. I think that one of the things that we would say is there oversight that could be needed? Sure, absolutely. Just as there are, as the town has created a rule and licensing for rentals 30 days and more, I think that's a great thing, because it forces the homeowner or the owner to make sure that, number one, their tenants are taking care of the property through inspections, and also they're taking care of the properties through inspections inside and out. It's worked well and benefited a lot of towns with this joint venture to make it a positive for the town by increasing tax dollars, increasing revenue to the local businesses. And the bottom line is it collaborates as a win-win and helps fund many of the 2040 visions by bringing a tax dollars directly to Chesapeake Beach. I think if we worked together with the town, and we worked together, planning and zoning and the commission, we could all find a way with reasonable standards. I think we can all win with this situation. All the information was brought by VRBO, Wikipedia, and of course the town of Chesapeake Beach codes. So here's a couple of properties, and to give you an idea of the difference between what you're looking at in a vacation rental property compared to something that was being, and obviously homeowners do take care of their properties as well, but you can't say that this is the exact same house, and which one would you want to stay at, or which one would you want to live in? Which one would you want to live next door to? There's one more picture, I think. That's the back end of it, but this is another property. And this property was, Ms. Odell actually had contacted us because we were purchasing the property from the homeowner, and it said, can you please do something with this property? The homeowner is actually saying that we were holding up the deal, and it wasn't the truth, but our goal was to make this house look like the house on the right. So again, as if you were the neighbor, which one would you like to have living next to you? And I think one of the things in conclusion, one of the things I'd like to say is, really, we want to support all the property owners, whether they're short-term, long-term, Airbnb, commercial. I think that everybody can work together. Even obviously, any landlord, anybody that is living in town that is an owner occupied as well, totally makes sense to work with this program and work with everyone. And I think the bottom line is we should bring this up to the community and let the community decide. I don't think that was necessarily done. One of the questions I had was, in chapter 290-43, where it says these things, was there ever a vote on this? Where did it come from? Where can, and Mr. Chesapeake, you actually said, we can petition to the Board of Appeals and ask them to define it. What we need is we need good common sense rules that'll work for everyone, and maybe we need to step out and we need to bring this up to a vote for the town. One of the things that I'd like to know is what happened with the survey. Some of the things here you can see are some of the comments that were said at vacation rental. Just a nice cottage, nice house, the beaches, some of the different things with those, some of the restaurants that they went to, just really what you're looking for is you're looking for something that they want to come to this town, and they do want to spend their money, but they also want to relax and they want to have a good time.
Okay, Mr. Bonnegutter, is that the end?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I will contact you separately and see if you would care to give me a copy of that presentation so that we can have it available
Sure.
to staff if they want to look at it again.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Next, Mr. Josh Johnson from the Tourism Coalition. Did you want to make a statement?
Please, yes. And do appreciate your time. And over the 6 months that we've spent, different individuals, not just individuals with vacation rental, short-term rentals, also other local businesses here. I do have to say very much, I appreciate what the board's doing. There's so many differences that are out there. We've all expressed those differently. I think one thing that we can define is trying to be able to do is what's best for the community, being true to who Chesapeake Beach is. And that started back in 1930 with vacation rentals. That's how we were put on the map. There was affluent people from New York. There was affluent people from Washington, D.C. that came, and the times that they weren't here, they rented those properties out. It's who we are. It's where we came from. It's our roots. I think all of us can appreciate where we all came from individually, and now we're all here. Here tonight was more of a forum, I believe, to decide about a zoning decision that was made several years ago, probably with, and it seems to me tonight, I'm probably one of many, and the same as you. Extremely confusing. Does it really give us what our vision of this community is? Does it give the vision for what we can do as human beings with each other? And I think that's what it is. Was it done with the insight and the intellect that we have now? And I think some of what Chad's already said really brings to light. We need to be able to work on something of facts and figures, not feelings. And he really emphasized a lot of the facts that are involved, a lot of the positive things that we do here. So, in respect to that, adding a little bit of light to Chris, the bed and breakfast, my grandparents had a bed and breakfast. I loved being, around people and doing something like this. And, the town really has the ambiguity to understand what it is. There's no federal law that states a bed and breakfast has to have someone to stay in it and so on. And again, there's so much gray area there. And especially with what we're going through right now, it's just to clarify, it's up to us to define what a bed and breakfast is. It's up to us to define what a vacation rental is. And that goes right into the zoning of how these were designed. Federal law stipulates residential property is residential and a commercial property is commercial. That is a federal law. And so what federal law has given us the capability of is to decide as a township, as the people that we all represent, right? Because it's not just us, it's the town, it's the residents here that decide these types of things, what they want to do with the code, and if they want to change things from residential to commercial and so on and have those apply. That is, again, the federal law stipulates clearly what is residential and what is not. And so just wanted to bring that to light. Also, News Channel 4 and their executive of research went through our code enforcement when they were out here and looking at things. They couldn't find the codes. It was not at that time, even on our website, anything about short-term rentals. So just to add some clarity on that. So, there's two sides. What we want is commonality. We want to be able to work forward. And so you're seeing a little bit of where we're coming from, January 31st, it's a day that will go down in infamy for us. And I hope, with what Chad shares, what other people are sharing, what I share, you'll kind of see that. Benefits, as kind of mentioned, economic impact is significant. Tourism, it does bring tourism, which I think whether it be Pat Mahoney that states so many fun ways of you come down the road and you see the bay and your cares go away. I love that. It does draw you. And that's a fact. It has since the 30s and it does now. Value to new home residents is significant, right? Because we are improving. My taxes went up in 2 years, 40% on my property. So it definitely has a tax increase for all of us, right? has helped keep taxes low because of the property values. That means that everyone else in the town is paying less because we're paying more. Generally speaking, good neighbors. I think we all have a bad apple. Doesn't matter if they're long-term, short-term, if they're, you know, bought their house. Yeah, I think that we really need to classify that. And to really add to what Connie said, we talked about the 2 complaints of Airbnbs, but I think if we're going to have a real conversation, let's look at the complaints that we had with town residents that live here. Because the difference is, and I'll define that later, the difference is we're only looking at a certain portion of the information. Let's make a decision based on the facts. Employment, we use local people. Well, you know, I don't know if you saw the News Channel 4 prelude that we had to kind of address this. You know, Kelly that does the cleaning service for you know, what did do cleaning services for us. She's right here. People that fix our place, HVAC, plumbing, they're right here in this community. I live here. I'm proud to live here. And I'm proud to be able to help people that are right here in this community. And so that being said, you know, there's other businesses here that are using H1 and H2 visa people that are not even from the United States to come work at their facilities. And so those are the types of things too, that a conversation, all of us that are trying to help this community, I think that needs to be said. We even have one Airbnb that focuses solely on being able to rehabilitate people with mental illnesses, and not violent ones, but people that might need a friend, people that might need time away. The Bay is something, has our cares go away, right? But that's what they've decided to do, not just because of profit. It doesn't have anything to do for them for that. It has something to do with connecting with people and making sure that there's a viable way that they can do that here. As far as the 2040 vision plan, you can really see that it's about tourism. Now, one thing that is extremely important to understand about Airbnbs, vacation rentals, it is mandatory that we have 24 hours before and after each one of our rentals to assure the fact that it is sterilized and cleaned. There is no hotel in the United States that does such a thing, nor has a mandate to do so. If we're concerned about COVID, the COVID spread, the reason why we're all wearing a mask every day and changed what our kids will realize and experience and live through for the rest of their lives, we also need to be mindful of what we do to assure the fact that doesn't happen. We are mindful of that. We are moving forward at a cost, or was at a cost for us financially. You know, others are not experiencing that. We're still doing the right thing. There is a few things that were addressed before about vacation rentals, some of the myths that were there, some other ones we should address too. The COVID kind of mentioned that. The party house, you know, I was shocked. I'll be honest. I was shocked to hear that there was party houses, because I actually lived beside mine, and boy, was I on top of anything. And, you know, I have a prominent business owner that's here. I have a person that's family member of the Rod and Reel Club. I am so, because, you know, I want to be a good neighbor. It's important to me. And so I called Sheriff Evans, and Sheriff Evans went on record with News Channel 4 and said that there was no violations that he knew of, no complaints. First I heard, Connie, thank you for sharing, that there was any, that was different from what Sheriff Evans said. And also, if you look at public record, and that's the reason why, because I did the research, you're going to find the complaints that went on in this community by far and away, I mean, it's not even close, were from town residents, not Airbnbs. And again, I like to talk about facts because it's important that we make decisions with those. People just eat at home. If you want to go to the mountains in the Poconos, I went to a place in Deep Creek, and we got away with a couple of families or two before this whole COVID thing came around. We wanted to get away. We brought our food with. Now, the difference with that is they're coming to enjoy the bay. These people already want to be out. They want to be doing something. Bayfront, we have now and I went back and did an analysis. 70% of the people that stayed with me asked questions in regards to, how do I have access to the water park? How do I get to Bayfront property? Bayfront Park, can I do that? The Rod and Reel Club, who's a charter? You know, I've got it there. And I know, talking with the entire coalition, we're all experiencing the same thing. That's another added benefit of us. We're really the tourism board. We're the ones that are applying that pressure to individuals to come here instead of go to Deal, right? Bunch of charter boat captains in Deal, bunch of charter boat captains in Annapolis. We want them to stay here. And that's really a contact that we've tried to do. Places been here for 40 years, or the band has been here for 40 years. Definitely a misconception right now, tonight, even. I mean, I think that whether it's board members, whether it's us, there's so much ambiguity to what is being said or how it's classified. I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that confusing at best, applying completely, there's just even, Shad looked into a few things, the difference between a 7 and 30-day rental, there's ambiguity right there. And tourism, and Larry, thank you, you're exactly right. Tourism versus, vacation rental, short-term rental. So I don't think that is the case. And especially with, the research that we've done and various other individuals. As far as solutions, right? Because the thing is, my day job, that's all I do. We got to find common ground. We got to find a way forward. And that's what's most important with what we're trying to do tonight. We need to find that we need to know that we're first and foremost a tourist destination. Everybody knows it. Let's admit it. Let's move forward. The common ground, the people have spoken. There's been 3 different things that have went out. Number 1, my petition, there might have been 5 or 6 people that complained and that the ban actually went in place. There's 600 people, including all the major businesses of which I had time to. The only ones that didn't sign are the only ones that didn't have time to go visit. I do have a day job. There was the next door survey that was done. Between the 600 people that went on versus the 5 or 6 that complained versus a large number, looking at the numbers, 65 to 75% of the people on Nextdoor were in favor of vacation rentals. And then this last, which I'm clearly assuming, at this point, might be a vote or 2 different here, but they are in favor versus not in favor. We need to do what the people want. We need to do and understand the value, the taxes, the tourism. We had a budget deficit this year. And I wonder, town residents have to sit here and say, would this have helped the cause? Would it brought more people to the restaurants here that would have created the tax dollars? Those are the types of questions that we have to sit here, because COVID happened, but this is really the only other major change that we made in this community. And it's been here since 1930. Expanded gambling wasn't wanted, right? It wasn't wanted. And so now, instead of having a completely reliance on gambling, would it not be better for the community to assure the fact that we have more options in tourism? And we all know, because of COVID, there are so many people scared to go to a hotel. I can say the first time I ever came here, I was at the Rod and Reel Club. I was in the 3rd booth. I love that place. I've been up to 1936 a bunch of times. I think I have a friend there, but we also have to have a realism as a community to look at it in a slight business sense. You're top heavy, and if something happens, what is the solution? All these things point to really being able to lift the zoning of this. It's really what this points to, because it's factually based. It's not emotionally based, it's factually based. And it's what's best for the community. It's clearly what the town constituents, of which you work for, of which we're a part of, they voted for. And I know that there was a planning and zoning board meeting that just came up with the Rod and Reel Club. And you had, 2 or 3 hours to be able to look at, hundreds of documents. I have no idea, really. But I know it wasn't 1 or 2. And I do know that they expanded the square feet of the gambling there. And that got passed. So we have to look at this and say, we need to make an actionable statement. Now, the mandate for this on July 31st went in a couple of weeks. The decision was made that quickly about this. And it's been 6 months. Now, on my coalition, I have individuals that rely on this this is the part of their retirement plan. I have people that are in the midst of losing their homes. There's people that have reached out to me that are struggling because of COVID, that would like to be able to rent out a room, that would like to be able to take care of their families, that would like to be able to save their homes. This is not a decision of sheer just code violation or zoning. This is about the people that are here that have said that they want change. And I believe at the end of the day, I see everyone that's here. I believe that you all, after seeing it and seeing what we present and looking at the facts, I would move that you take the zoning that made it a residential property and made it commercial, that tonight you can move to be able to reverse that. And then that would, in essence, make this null and void. We can talk to the board and assure the fact that there's a stay so that the people can get what the people would like. I do appreciate all your time. I know it's not easy. You know, I've sat in a hot seat for a while now. It's affected my family. It's affected my finances as well. And there's people out here that are relying on me to say what needs to be said. And I hope that all of you have heard that tonight. And again, I can't thank you enough for the service that you are. And it is a service. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, thank you. We have about 8 people that have signed up to make a statement. That does not include those that might be on the telephone. I had promised some of the board members, commission members, that I would request a motion to adjourn at 9 o'clock. We have about 20 or 30 minutes left. I'd like to go ahead and get through these 8 individuals. Hopefully they can make their point and succinctly, and so we can get through everybody, give everybody a chance. But if I could begin with Mr. Brad Boyce, would you like to make a statement?
Larry, he just posted in the chat. His microphone's not working.
Okay, then let's move on to Mr. Aaron Warren.
Good evening to the board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm a Chesapeake resident on C Street. I've been here for over 24 years. And I'm retired lieutenant from the Prince George's County Police Department, where I retired and been enjoying living in Chesapeake Beach while I was working in my retirement. With that said, I obviously don't have just some few points, because literally Shad, Melanie, and Joshua really covered a lot of my points that I wanted to make tonight. So I don't want to, go over that again. Hopefully you took that to heart, what they were saying. But what some of the points I really want to drive home, and I'm hoping somebody on the board or Chris on the staff or somebody on the staff, even maybe the code enforcer, can somebody please just give me the actual definition of a tourist home, a clear, defined definition of tourist home that a person could rely on to make a decision, and even more importantly, be in a position to try to enforce that code, which would not affect the person's livelihood, the rights to their property, that wasn't clearly and defined in the code. Even the actually clearly defined of what's considered a short-term rental. And I know there's a lot of cities and towns that have a 30, more than 30 days, you have to go get a license to rent your home for more than 30 days, where that way they can come in and check code. But a lot of places don't have anything in place for short-term, and the person has the right to, to do what they want to do with their property, as long as it's not affecting other people. And in that case, whether I wanted to, or any of you wanted to let a friend of yours, a family member, use your home for the weekend use it for a week, where would it clearly define in our code, whether it's for compensation or not for compensation, that we were not allowed to do that? I don't believe you can have a code that has any ambiguity or not being clearly defined and not open the town to basically civil litigation. I mean, if you're taking away people's income, livelihood, even just their right to use their property based on what they thought they could use it for and what is clearly not defined in the code, I think it's opening yourselves up. I think it'd be a better place to clearly define what the town would like to see from taking your survey. I'm kind of shocked and surprised that the survey was sent out so long ago and that we're not here to present the survey. So the people here that are on can actually hear the results of that survey. But just, I know overall, if this was an election, it would clearly be that the town is for short-term rental. This is a tourist town. You have people that come here to enjoy, whether they're going to the different restaurants, they're going to the shops, they're attending any kind of events. Obviously, we're not having that many events now with COVID, but when they're due have any events, whether it's in Chesapeake Beach, North Beach, it brings money to the town. It brings employment to the town. You have young kids. Teenage kids are wanting to have an employment and maintain their employment. And the tourism to the town is what helps supports that. It's not just the local people. Most people are not coming here to cook a meal at a kitchen. They want to go out and try the local restaurants. They want to enjoy what they have, whether it's going to rent ski jets or forgot what they're called, the paddle boards. That's what they're coming here to enjoy the town. That's what we've known for centuries now, or decades, I should say. And I should, hopefully you guys are taking all this in from the town, not bringing in any prior preconceived thoughts of why you're against it or for it, but just be open to what you're hearing from the residents of the town, that the majority of us are for short-term rentals. And the more importantly is that our code is not clearly defined. And if somebody please can just share that with me, that would be really great, really helpful tonight for this hearing. The other point I want to make too is a lot of times when people either come here to Chesapeake Beach or North Beach to do a short-term rental or even to the hotel, it's their first time visiting. A lot of people don't even realize that you can get to a waterfront without crossing the bay or going large distances. When they find out about our area, some of them will tend to say, hey, I want to buy property in town or in the town of North Beach. There's a benefit that is realized for people's property values that are not going down, but going up because this is a place that people want to come and buy. So there's another economic benefit to the town. So I'm just asking, as a retired police officer, when I heard that there were parties that are being affected by Airbnb, it made me laugh because I knew that wasn't the case. And I'm really shocked that we don't have the county officers here to kind of weigh in on that fact that short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBOs, whatever you want to call, compared to the parties, the drug use, or whatever else is happening in town, is not contributed to short-term rentals. 365 days, that we can even remotely put our hat on 2 events. If somebody wants to do the math compared to how many other violations of noise, parties, or whatever else that was actually committed by people that live in town, I don't even know why that is even a discussion. So please just take this into consideration. And I just want to end it in this way, that this is a benefit to the town. You can tax the short-term rentals and revenue for the town. And I'm really hoping that there is no ill intent from anybody in the town or on the board that has anything having to do with our local hotel. Because, you know, this should not be affecting their business. If they're running their business correctly, which I know I enjoy the new restaurant there myself, that this should not be even a remote rumor that's going around, that this was all stirred up after years of short-term rental. If you go back and see how long VRBOs and short-term rentals have been happening in town, and then all of a sudden during the year of COVID, now it's become an issue. There is some underlying reasoning why this is now coming up. And I would hope that nobody is taking liberty of their positions to benefit one individual or one entity other than the will of the people of this whole town of Chesapeake Beach and Calvert County. So once again, I'd like to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. You guys have a good evening and a safe evening.
Okay, Mr. Getman.
Unmute here. Okay, got myself unmuted. So Randy Getman, I'm a resident town of Chesapeake Beach. I also serve as your chairman of the Board of Elections for our town. I have a couple comments, going to try to keep this short. One is that I don't have any rental property or anything I want to do it with, but I've enjoyed Airbnb and VRBO in other cities and other towns. I've gone out, my wife and I, we've vacationed and we've used it. I also held a wedding party for my son at the firehouse at the North Beach Fire Department back in 2018. And the hotel didn't have enough, a lot of family came in, the hotel didn't have enough space. So we actually had 2 Airbnbs in North Beach and 1 south of the town. It was very helpful and worked very well. So I'm pro short-term rental. The second thing I want to talk about is the code. Everybody's really confused about the code. Chris did a good job of telling us the basics there of what's actually in there. Just to point out to everybody, table 29010, table 1 is at the end of it, and number 32 is the bed and breakfast. Number 34 is motel, hotel, tourist home. And then you can also go in the code. When you go to that table, it'll tell you where in the code. For example, bed and breakfast is in 29011P, and motel, hotel, tourist home is in 29011R. It doesn't allow short-term rentals under 30 days right now. However, it's the planning and zoning who would make a recommendation to changes to that table and to other portions of the code that would describe the items in that table. You could add vacation rentals, and you could there allow it in residential just by modifying the table and sending that to the town council, and it has to go through the ordinance procedures. You know, it's I've done ordinance modifications for the election board. So I'll tell you, it's a process, but that's how you would go at it, Larry and the planning and zoning. If you wanted to go that route, if the planning and zoning wanted to make those recommendations, that's what you would do, is you would look at table 1, talk to Chris, and modify it to allow those type of Airbnb and short term. I think it's a positive thing. I've listened to what the others have had to say, but I'm just a resident of Chesapeake Beach, and I have used Airbnb in other places. I'm going to stop because you have other people that want to talk.
Okay, thank you very much, Randy. Let's see, Denise Platter, would you like to make a statement? Denise, I don't hear anything. I'll move on to Ann Morgan, and I'll give Denise another chance if she checks in. Ann Morgan?
Yes. Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Bill Chambers, Ann Morgan, Chesapeake Beach. So if we're serious about growing our economy as the 2040 plan has projected, then short-term rentals are a no-brainer. We've heard all of the information already presented about increased tourism revenue. It'll add to our menu of lodging options we already have, which was just pointed out, are many times unavailable on weekends. The Rod and Reel Resort is a very popular destination up and down the East Coast. Revenues can be generated, it's obvious, through occupancy taxes, licensing fees. In the zoning ordinance, those things could be included, including restrictions on occupancy. So we're not going to have 25 people in a 3-bedroom house. North Beach is already doing this, so why aren't we? It's proven that short-term rentals increase spending from the homeowners as a result of the rental income. And you'll see from properties, including ours, that we upgraded a dilapidated house into a model home. Although we don't rent our house, it's something we would certainly want to have as an option as we get into our later years. Tourism statistics show beyond a doubt, and this is through the Maryland Tourism Commission, more travelers today are preferring VRBO rentals, Airbnb, HomeAway as their option for short-term stays. In Chesapeake Beach, in our experience, the short-term rental properties that were in existence before the ordinance, the ones that would be options for rental today, those owners take care of those properties far, far better than some of the long-term rentals, which actually are a blight on the town. So we're very much in support of this, and we appreciate Chad's presentation and dispelling myths and reinforcing facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Ms. Davis, are you available to make a statement?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I have a very short statement. First of all, I want to say thank you to Mayor Mahoney for this opportunity for me to speak at this meeting, even though I live in St. Mary's County. I'm a retired St. Mary's County public school teacher, and I've been here for 35 years. One thing I've noticed about tonight's talk that needs to be addressed is the difference between a regular bed and breakfast and an Airbnb. They are very, very different. And one of the biggest differences is that last month, Airbnb started selling shares of stock to the public. Most people who have a regular bed and breakfast aren't doing that. So to me, that makes it clearly a commercial enterprise. I've had an Airbnb operating barely 15 feet from the side of my house for almost 2 years now. Its website posts a minimum stay of 3 nights. Do the math, that's potentially 121 turnovers per year in a house that's not owner or manager occupied. I recorded 67 turnovers in 232 days in 2020 between May and December. That's not in the whole year. That's between May and December in the height of the COVID pandemic. I will never be able to sell my house and recoup the 35-year investment I've had here in this secluded waterfront vintage community with a turnover like that, barely 15 feet from my door. In good weather, which is most of the time here in the land of pleasant living, living next door to all that outdoor activity is like living next to the water park in Chesapeake Beach. Airbnbs are a nightmare for the neighbors who bought property in residential neighborhoods, believing there would never be a McDonald's or any other type of commercial franchise right next door. If it's a commercial endeavor, It does not belong in residential zoning any more than a Motel 6, a Hilton Garden Inn, or an Airbnb. A motel by any other name is still a motel. And I say thank you to Dick Myers for publishing my letter to the editor in the County Times last Thursday, January 21st. Thank you all so much for listening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Steiner.
Hello, everyone. I live in Chesapeake Beach, and I also live a few feet from actually one of Shad Montague's Airbnbs. And in contrast, we've actually had no problems with the short-term rental next door. If we did, I trust Shad to take care of the problem. To be honest with you, I don't even remember having a problem, but he's been very communicative with me about, when we moved in, we wanted to put up a new fence. He's been, that spanned our lot. That the house is literally like right next to me. And so we've had no problems. And actually we've used the Airbnb. I had my parents flew into the area. Cindy Greengold was asking about the demo of people in the vintage area was the term she used. We're first-time home buyers. There's a lot of renters here. This is an area, we have been very happy in Chesapeake Beach. It's an area that's close to DC. It has these smaller homes that are accessible and still affordable for people with modest incomes. And so that's kind of the I guess the demo of many of my neighbors. And since these are small houses and they are affordable, it's very hard to find space in my house, and it was really nice. We are very happy with our new neighbors, which are renters, and they're great. But it was nice having a house next door actually to have my parents stay in when they visited. I would much rather have a non-vacant short-term rental than a vacant home, which is really bad, or even an occasionally used beach home. I think the other prototype home in Chesapeake Beach is a occasionally used second home. I'm surrounded by a lot of empty houses that are second homes, and I think I've lucked out that many of them are kept up, but that's not necessarily the case. I do understand the regulations existed before, previous years, and maybe people weren't aware of it. So I guess it's not fair to those that want them banned to say it wasn't the status quo, but I was a little scared. As just somebody who as a first-time homeowner, I am a little scared about the number of short-term rentals in terms of houses that might be dropped on the housing market very quickly if the ban continues. In contrast, having short-term rentals nearby improves the housing stock of the neighborhood. I did not say, there is a potential cost of a little noise potential, but we haven't had that problem at least near where I am. I think the last speaker in favor also noted that the having the ability to rent out for short-term rentals increases the option value of a house. Sales in Calvert County, not lately, but historically, they take a very long time. If for some reason my partner and I had to leave the area, this does give another option other than renting or leaving the house vacant. And so, God forbid we have to leave Chesapeake Beach for job reasons. This allows us a little bit of, if we were able to do an Airbnb, and give us a little cushion while we still try to figure out what to do with the home. I think that short-term rentals can be regulated without an outright ban. If there are issues, I think the council and local law enforcement can handle it. And finally, the beach is going to will gravitate to having this demand because we are Chesapeake Beach, we are near the beach, and there's demand for this type of service. If the city council does not deal with the regulations full on and kind of create a framework for how to do this, I would worry that this issue would just come up over and over again. And I think that the right move might be to create a framework for short-term rentals. Tax them if you'd like, lower my taxes, tax Shad, tax my neighbor a little bit more, and do it right rather than, sorry, Shad, rather than spending money and time enforcing a ban. And I think also finally, another speaker had mentioned this is already going on in North Beach, so it's not like we're not going to have these problems. We have, our twin city is renting these houses, and so we're just concentrating. If it's not really a problem, but we're concentrating the rentals over there, and we're not getting any of the benefits. So, okay, so that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. And Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, are you available?
Yeah, hey, I didn't have my hand raised or anything. Hey, so I am a brand new resident. Matter of fact, I haven't spent a night there. My wife and I, we just bought there about a month ago, and I'm really just trying to get tuned in to the to the tenor of the town and the people in it. And I've really enjoyed the dialogue tonight. Just my initial impressions of it. I thought the two briefers did a fantastic job. Really informed my opinion on the way ahead. One, I think it was Josh referenced the 2040 plan, and I read it while we were sitting here, and I really admired it. I think it's a great direction to go. And look, I don't think this is necessarily something that's very black and white. I think there's kind of a continuum when you look at short-term rentals, in that it can be done in a very calibrated and controlled manner, in that the town can really maintain its charm, its appeal, preserve its history, the legacy of the town, while at the same time being a win-win. So I really appreciated the dialogue. It's really informed my opinion. And, having I've spent some time in Delaware, Maryland, as well as the Jersey Shore. And when I say it's a continuum, when I say doing it in a very calibrated manner, I could drive down the entire Jersey Shore, and there are some towns that did this in a very good way, that have been able to maintain their charm and appeal. And there's others that just opened up the faucet and kind of went overboard, and the town lost its appeal and its charm, and wasn't necessarily the community that the town initially envisioned when they did it. So again, hey, thanks for letting me listen in. Really informed, really proud to be part of the community. And I'm not going to be living there for a couple of years. I got to go overseas, but I'm looking forward to coming back and raising my kids there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Ms. Platter, are you available? Okay, Ms. Platter was on the list. Is there anybody that's on the phone that didn't have a chance to sign up on our chat list that wants to make a statement?
Yes, good evening. My name is Susan Allen. My husband has actually lived here in Chesapeake Beach for the past 37 years, and I've lived here for about 18 years now. And I actually side with Miss Davis, the previous caller, in opposition to the short-term rentals. I'll make it real brief. Lived in Maryland most of my life. I can remember coming down here to North Beach for the day, coming down here to Breezy Point for the day. And I have a lot of friends in Northern Virginia and in very different areas of Maryland, quite a distance from here. And everybody still comes down here as a day destination. I'm not aware of that many people I personally know that want short-term rentals. People come down to Annapolis for the day. The town has changed a lot over the years and for the better. I mean, there's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of events, pre-COVID, but I don't see, I personally don't care for the whole idea of short-term rentals. People come down here, they go to the water park, they enjoy the beach for the day. Like Miss Davis had mentioned, this is a small community and we still have that community feel without bringing in businesses basically to our residential neighborhoods. And I do understand if somebody, from a financial standpoint, if people need that additional money or things are tight right now during COVID, but COVID's not going to be around forever. That's just my opinion, and I do appreciate you giving me a minute to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your opinion. Is there anybody else that's on the phone that wanted to make a statement?
I would.
Okay, Mr. Donovan.
This is Wes Donovan. My family has been a part of the community for, decades. I couldn't even tell you how many. We own the Rod and Reel, 1936 in Marina West. Colonel Martinez, I'd like to thank you for your service. I'd be reminiscent if I didn't say thank you to you for all that you've done for our country. On the Airbnbs, my father talked about it last month at the Planning and Zoning, and we've always been in supportive of businesses in town, whether it's Airbnbs, little boutique shops, barbers, anything that we've always had a philosophy that business begets business, and everything that was said on the history of the town is absolutely correct. And the presentation did a really phenomenal job of explaining the history. So I just want to go on record that, we are for short-term rentals. We always have been. We don't have any, but that doesn't mean we can't, be in favor for people that do have them. And, they should be allowed to be in town, and their investment in the property, I think we have to respect their rights as what they chose to do with their finances. So I just wanted to throw that in and say thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, well, thank you very much. There was a question earlier about whether opposition or support related to the Rod and Reel present. So thank you for clearing up your position. Is there anybody else on the phone that would like to talk?
I do.
Yes.
My name is Gerald Robertson. Some of you all know me from over at the town, and you see my chat just a moment ago through G. I'm a veteran as well, Army and Navy. I actually stopped flying my flags right now. I'm a little disappointed in how we're running ownership and taking hard-earned money that I've invested in to one day I'm supposed to retire here. I've been in Chesapeake Beach for 14 years. This place has gone mad. It just, I don't know if it's just me personally that I'm being focused at, but I live next door to a lady that purchased a house in May. I think we've seen her maybe about 8 times from May until now. She only comes over to get the people out of the house and replace someone else in. If you are going to do all of this, I'm opposing all of this. I live next door, a single family house. I spent $865 in this house. There was no rules here, or there was nothing stating that this was a commercial property or zone to be rented out. I would have never spent my money like this. Now I'm dealing with an issue next door where I got this lady with She's just renting out to people with huge German shepherds, and they coming at you at the fence. She won't even close her fence in. Airbnb, quietly. So I've done everything procedurally wise, called the town, done everything I have to. So now it's really forcing me to go to law enforcement. And yes, I'm going to go to school and get my training. I look stupid carrying a firearm outside, but I got caught outside on the rocks with a Rhodesian Ridgeback charging at me. And the guy took his time that was renting the house along with 8 other people because they always came in packs. That's what I dealt with from May. We dealt with from May of last year until now. And he took his time coming to get the dog off of me as though he was owning me. From this day period, I'm gonna take the first thought in my mind if someone ever do that to me again. Not only that, they come into our yard, never speak, invading privacy, to walk through our yard, bathing suits and everything, and don't say excuse me. And they have a fence. This lady, you got to do something about it. You all know who I'm talking about. Do something about this before it be on you all's head about taking care of this, because I'm going to take action. I've called dog animal control. They don't come. You're not going to contain me in my own yard anymore. Unless you're going to pay me a $1.4 million for aggravate my expenses, it ain't going to happen beside me. Because if it ever come in my yard down again, I'm going to put it to sleep. I'm done with this. Now, there's other things I would like to say, but I'm not going to hold up the time. But the light stays on all night. We got people living upstairs. They come down to the side of the house. They got a stairway on the side of the house. The light stays on all freaking night. They got dogs upstairs. They got dogs downstairs. They got 7 to 8 people in the house throughout. You never see a cleaner company come in there to sanitize that house. The children come and sit in our yard, and I have to be the rude one to ask them, can they get over into their own property? No, I don't want to deal with them. Don't want to. I can't even fish in my own little backyard in the front yard anymore. They're all over. Jet skis now. We got 5 jet skis pulled up on the pier, and they're putting fuel. They're refueling them right there on the pier. So now when I get my boat, can I fuel up my boat right there at my own pier? I'm done, because we'll be talking later. Not being offensive, I'm upset. So there is a difference. So respect that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John
I'm
Robinson.
Gerald. I'm Gerald.
Gerald, okay. Is there anybody else on the phone that wants to make a statement?
Yes, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I really admire everybody's statements, and I'm always for the win-win. So I think it's a win for the city to have tourism, and Airbnbs, of course, provide tourism. I have talked with Gerald, and I really appreciate Wes coming out and saying he supports us, because Gerald said the same. His dad said the same. I've talked to Bobby at Abner's. I've talked to Maria at Mama Lucia. And every restaurant in town and every small business is in trouble. So whatever we can do to help, like I have a long editorial that I send my guests, like, hey, go visit Mama Lucia's, go visit Abner's, go visit the Rod and Reel in 1936 and Boardwalk Cafe. They're awesome, So I think tourism is important for the city. I love the city. I totally fell in love with the Twin Cities, North Beach and Chesapeake Beach. So why should we let all of it go to North Beach? It's important. And some of these issues that have been discussed, yes, regulate Airbnbs, just like everything else needs to be regulated. If there's not enough parking on the street, don't issue a license. If they have their own parking, yes, it's a no-brainer. Let them have a license, but do it like in Annapolis City. It's an annual license. You pay an annual fee, so then you can regulate it. If somebody's a bad actor, get rid of them. If they keep having parties and are a nuisance to their neighbors, then get rid of them. Don't give them another license. It's easy, My neighbors personally have said I have been the best neighbor to them in the last 20 years. I'm very selective about my guests. Airbnb nor myself do not allow parties. I feel personally duped when somebody lies to me. I don't want parties. I just want families at the house, quiet enjoyment. I want them to enjoy the view, and that's all, and I want them to spend all their vacation dollars at all the local restaurants and all the shops, and I give them a whole list of places to visit. So, you know, where's the difference between a bed and breakfast and an Airbnb? How is bed and breakfast not commercial, but Airbnb is? It's such a gray area. And with all due respect, you know, I do respect that. I think it is a conversation. It's not a clear thing, you know. And I've talked with the mayor, you know, the last several days. I started a whole action group in Annapolis because we went through all these conversations last year for a whole year. And then in January, the city decided unanimously that, you know, we are going to let Airbnbs take place. You can have one property, unlimited days, when at first they only wanted to do owner occupied. But then we said, you know, the Naval Academy families, that's not fair to them. They raised families. They've been host to other families' kids at the Naval Academy. If they want to come back to the city, let them have a place that they come to on the weekends, but they can rent out to during the week, you know, because they've done their service. They've serviced other Navy families. So it's a real privilege to have an Airbnb, and it's also a huge responsibility, you know, and we are all very aware of that. We are all very much conscious about neighborhoods, and we want to immerse and be a good neighbor. Like my neighbor said, you're the best neighbor in 20 years. And I appreciate that. And I love my neighbors. And so I guess we have to continue this discussion in a really good win-win way and just figure out, is this really commercial or is it really more residential? And is it a win-win for all the local businesses? Because I know Maria told me that she only had half of the business this summer. I mean, that's sad. This last summer, only half of the business, which normally is supposed to carry her through the winter. And I know she's not the only one. You know, there's so many businesses that are boarded up. I have lots of friends, business owners in Annapolis and in Chesapeake Beach. One business just opened up in North Beach, a little cheese shop. And I love the hook and fine. And you know, it's a great city, but it's always been a tourist town. It needs to stay a tourist town. And Gerald is not afraid of competition. He told me that specifically. Me and Josh, we talked with him. We had breakfast with him. He said, I'm not worried about competition. Competition is good. He has 3 restaurants. He can't afford those 3 restaurants just with his Rod and Reel hotel. You know, he needs other business to come in. And daytime tourists, they're not going to stay around for dinner. You know, they're going to go home. So if we can keep them in town, let's keep them in town. Let's make this a win-win. Thank you for your time. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else on the phone that wants to make a statement? Okay, hearing none, I would point out that several of the town councilmen have been on the call here listening to your comments, so that's good. They get to hear what you have to say. I'd also suggest, if you haven't done it, the chat column has been very busy with people commenting, and you can file that before you close so you can read those again if you like. I'm going to do that. It's past 9 o'clock. I had said that I was going to ask if there was a motion to adjourn at 9. I'll do that in a minute. But I would point out that, let's see. Our next meeting will be on February 24th. That time the PC will discuss whether to recommend that the town council continue with the current policies or that changes be made. I would guess that it will take us more than one meeting to discuss the various possibilities. As Colonel Martinez said, there's several ways to skin a cat here. So it won't be an immediate thing. And then we make a recommendation to the town council. The town council then has to decide, and they have to publish it and provide time for public comment. So any change to the current code will require some time, just to let everybody know that if you aren't familiar with it. So with that, is there a motion by the any commissioner to adjourn? I hope that doesn't mean that we have to stay on until Are any commissioners still on the line?
Larry, I'll make a motion to adjourn. I don't think we can make a decision tonight, but I really appreciate everybody's comments. I think they were well received and well presented, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I do think there is a win-win here, and we will certainly work to see if we can find it for sure.
Okay, anyone
So,
else?
motion to adjourn.
So do we
Second.
have a motion to adjourn?
A second.
Okay, second. Any discussion? I know Ms. Blackwelder made some comments. Any other comments that commissioners would like to make before we vote to adjourn? All right, hearing none. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and for your comments. They mean a lot. And we'll be considering these issues. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.